I still remember that freezing moment in that retail store, a moment that would forever redefine my understanding of courage and dignity. I was in the electronics section of a local retail store when I witnessed an altercation between an elderly white man and a young black man. I had been bursing for a new set of headphones when an elderly white man stormed over to a young black man standing near a display. The man's shrill voice cut through the store as he spat out his hateful decree, "Go back to Africa where you belong." I felt a shock ripple through the stunned crowd from those hateful words. I had seen prejudice before, but this was different. It wasn't delivered behind closed doors or whispered in hushed tones. It was unleashed in broad daylight. The elderly man's eyes burned with a self-assured, misplaced superiority as if he were the arbiter of who truly belonged. The young man, whose name I later learned was Frank, stood rooted to the spot. His posture was a study in controlled defiance. His gaze remained steady, despite the onslaught of verbal abuse. I could almost see the gears turning in his mind as he processed each hateful word. At that very moment, the aisles became a silent stage. The other shoppers, initially frozen in shock, began to murmur and shift uncomfortably from one side to the other. I felt my heart pounding louder than ever, a mixture of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming desire to do something, though I couldn't quite move. Time stretched, every second laden with palpable tension. Frank's response was not immediate, but when it came, it was as if a switch had been flipped. In a calm, measured tone that belied the ferocity of the situation, Frank said, "Sir, I'm proud of who I am, and I belong wherever I choose." His voice was clear and unwavering, carrying an inner strength. The crowd collectively exhaled as if some oppressive weight had been lifted, and murmurs of approval rippled through the store. To me, it was the moment when the power dynamic flipped, where the force of hatred was overcome not by anger, but by the quiet, resolute dignity of one man. Even the elderly man's eyes widened for a moment, disbelief struggling against the fury that already defined his features. Instead of escalating his tirade, he seemed momentarily deflated, as if the challenge in Frank's tone had exposed the frailty beneath his bluster. I found myself clenching my fists and gripping the edge of a shelf, my inner voice screaming that this was a victory for truth and decency. The shift was subtle but seismic. A single sentence from Frank had turned the tide. As the confrontation unfolded, the store's atmosphere changed dramatically. No longer was it just a retail environment filled with aisles of products. It had transformed into a crucible of change, a space where the stark reality of racism collided head-on with the power of resilience. I could see a young mother shielding her child with one arm and offering a nod of solidarity to Frank with the other. For me, as an onlooker who had always believed that empathy and decency could prevail, witnessing Frank's defiant reply stirred something deep within. Realized that his quiet rebellion was not about being confrontational. It was a profound statement of self-empowerment. When someone uses hate as their weapon, meeting it with calm and dignity is often the most powerful retaliation. In that moment, the young man did something extraordinary. He reclaimed his narrative without shouting, without stooping to the level of his aggressor. His calm was both an act of protest and a sign of peace. I recall noticing how the crowd's initial shock slowly transformed into active support. People began to voice their agreement softly, some even stepping forward to back up Frank's stance. The elderly man, now isolated on the cold, unforgiving floor of his own bigotry, could no longer hide behind his authority. His tirade had lost its momentum, and it was clear that the energy in the room had shifted irrevocably. The store manager stepped in to escort him out, a small victory in the face of bigotry, and the murmurs of support gradually turned to applause. Internally, I wrestled with a mix of emotions, relief that injustice was being challenged, and a piercing sadness for all those who endure such moments of discrimination. It was then that I realized that Frank's response wasn't just an isolated act of defiance. It was a call to action for every person who has ever been made to feel less than human. His bravery in the face of utter disdain reminded me that each of us holds the power to confront cruelty simply by refusing to be diminished by it. In the aftermath of the incident, as I later recounted the event to friends and family, I found that it became a touchstone for broader conversations about respect, identity, and community. People were moved by the notion that, even when faced with raw hatred, a simple declaration of self-worth can silence injustice. I have since thought about that day every time I witness acts of discrimination, and it always inspires me to stand up, to speak out, and to believe in the quiet power of dignity. In the end, while the encounter might have lasted only a few minutes, its impact endured far longer. The echoes of Frank's simple yet defiant words lingered in my mind, a testament to the fact that our true strength lies not in our ability to cast hate, but in our capacity to rise above it with calm, measured resolve.